Hello everybody and welcome back to the Night Garden. This is Noob vs. Pro, where Ledge,
a noob to drawing, is pitted against Vamp,
his pro artist husband. So, it's our anniversary.
It's our anniversary! Bling! Confetti!
Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary! This is our 9-year anniversary of being married.
The date of recording, not the date that this comes out. So September 19th is our anniversary.
Yes.
And we wanted to do something special for each other, because it's been kind of a hard year.
So we decided that we wanted to gift one another something for our anniversary, and it's a gift of art.
Yep, because that's something that we both have been doing together for the course of the year now, and it's something that means a lot to both of us. So we're going to watch yours first today.
We are going to watch mine first, so are you prepared to be blown away?
I'm kind of nervous because I don't know what you did.
Yep, I know. It's secret. Alright, here we go.
So we're starting with green.
We are starting with a green background, and
oh, this is the cave, isn't it?
already with like 4 lines down, you predicted that it is the cave.
I mean, that's a pretty easy guess. Look at it.
What? It's in a bunch of squiggles. What do you mean? What do you mean?
Darling, I'm an artist.
This is squiggles. How do you... This could just be worms for all you know. I would draw you worms. Would you love me if I were a worm?
Yes, I would.
Ah, wow, you worm lover.
Yeah, wow.
So, yes, you are correct. This year in July, we, as an anniversary adventure and vacation, went to Mammoth National Park. Voted one of the most boring and disappointing national parks.
The third worst.
The third worst. And we have contention with that because we absolutely enjoyed it. However, we really enjoy going on adventures, going to these places, and actually going there for the knowledge and the history and the not archaeology. Well,
geology.
There was some archaeology.
There was some archaeology, but you're thinking geology.
Yeah.
I'm a massive nerd, and I really enjoy geology. So my favorite thing about going into the caves was just seeing how massive they were and learning about how they formed and stuff like that. Another thing, in case it's not painfully apparent, I am super into bats and vampires and stuff like that. But bats in general, I really enjoy bats, and they are... They have a lot of bats, or they used to have a lot of bats. Unfortunately, they are dealing with white nose fungus, which is something that has taken out a lot of the bat population in America. But we were lucky enough that on one of our tours, we actually did get to see a bat flying around.
Yeah, actually, in the cave, and they said that that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
They light that place up like Christmas.
Yep.
Like, it's got so many different lights, and there were actually a lot of really interesting questions asked by young visitors too on the tours, like asking, you know, I was at this other cave and they were having issues and contemplating the lights that they were using because it was causing algae growth and other growth in the actual cave system that wasn't natural or wasn't wouldn't have typically been there without this light being present.
I like what you're doing, by the way, with your kind of blending and these brushes that you're using.
Yep, this is all that gauche brush from the previous Ricky Tikki Tavi.
That brush that you're like, I like this.
I think I like it. I still have a lot to learn with it and figure out how the blending actually works with it. And
well, if you want to sit down someday and like kind of let me give you some tips.
Just playing with it, I learned a lot. And
yeah.
I was like getting so anxious, and I was just like, man, I just want to get the cave portion in there. And like I'm doing all this other surrounding stuff because learning from the Ricky Tikki Tavi, you need to start from your farthest and your deepest point away from the camera and pull it in.
And that's really difficult with something like this because you actually have 2 areas that are furthest away.
Yeah, the interior of the cave, but then also the far point where that pathway was and those trees and that greenery.
It was really smart to start with your dark green, though, and work your way up to more bright.
Yeah, after doing the Ricky Tikki Tavi piece and kind of discovering that it's hard to make the gouache go all the way through and be thick enough without like just stabbing it kind of thing.
Well, and that's interesting because recently I've started to play around with actual gouache.
That was why when I saw that brush, I was like, oh, you know what? The thing that you made traditional artly wise, was really cool, and it was made of of gouache, and so I was like, well, maybe I'll give this a try, and that's kind of...
And it does seem like it blends pretty true to the actual medium too.
That's
so like when you're working with gouache, it's kind of a in between watercolor and acrylic in terms of density. So like it layers like watercolor, but it's got the coverage of acrylic. So it's a really thin paint. But it's thicker than watercolor, so you don't get as many of the mistakes that watercolor gives. It's got a little bit more forgiveness than watercolor.
Right.
And I think I've talked about this before in a Noob vs. Pro, that I used to work pretty extensively in ink and watercolor. And, like, trying gouache for the first time was like, oh, man, this is like watercolor with an undo button.
That's fun.
So I really enjoy gouache, and I like the kind of... effects that this brush gives you too, because you can see all of your colors through, and it gives this really interesting kind of depth that you don't get just from doing a standard round brush.
Yeah, and I had a lot of there was a lot of trial and error in this, because there are so many different colors within greens, and in nature there's so many colors.
Right.
And this is a rock wall right here that is like, I can't remember if it's not limestone, but it's
sandstone.
Sandstone.
The top parts were shale.
Shale.
And then it was sandstone and limestone.
Yeah.
So the sandstone is a little bit more compact than the limestone. Limestone's what dissolves away and makes the caves.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to go geeky again, going back to talking about the caves. The Mammoth Caves are interesting because they're a dry cave system as opposed to a wet formed cave system, which means that they were made by rivers going through, yeah, but like they don't have all the stalagmites and stalactites because it's not from like water dripping through. It's made from actual river systems, underground river systems going through,
eroding all of this stuff away. Yeah. And this is the huge like iconic historic entrance that, okay, so we were in Kentucky in July, and the average temperature during the day was about 98 degrees with like
94, 95.
5,000% humidity.
Yeah. So it was hot.
So it was very hot, but standing in front of this cave was like standing inside an air-conditioned room.
Yeah. You rounded the crest of the hill, and it felt like somebody literally turned the air on. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And that's because cave systems have a constant temperature year-round, and their cave system actually has a constant temperature of about 54 to 55 degrees. So, like, the reason why that happens is because rock holds in heat, and when you've got, like, an average temperature year-round, you know, in the 50s, or like your core temperature is an average of the 50s. That's what stays inside of the rock. So,
and I was doing this working from one of the photographs that we actually took.
I kind of figured like looking at reference and stuff like that is really important.
Yeah.
And something like this, you don't just pull from your imagination.
No, this was a lot of fun to get this gnarly, gangly little tree in the very, very foreground, and trying to figure out how to do the leaves.
Oh, I love how you approach this. This is so cool.
Oh, it was a lot of fun, and I was so like, does this actually look like an actual tree? And I was comparing it to the reference picture without like, because leaves are freaking flat, so you just have like a very thin string.
Yeah.
That kind of looking thing.
A lot of how you do trees are incredibly difficult. It's one of the first things.
Trees suck.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that we try to draw as beginner artists, and like one of the hardest things to draw because you have such a strong iconic thought of a tree, but also there's so many flat moving parts on a tree.
Don't meet your heroes. Don't draw trees. First thing that I drew for this channel was a tree.
But think about how you approached the leaves for that versus how you approached it here.
Yep, and in Rikki Tikki Tavi, I also drew a tree, so that really helped with my knowledge of like, okay, going forward, draw trees this way. Got it, noted. But like, there's so many different sections in this that was hard because there's just these like overhangs of the dirt and the rocks, and
rocks are very, very difficult to draw too because there's so many different shades,
textures,
stuff like that.
And stuff too. And so I was having a hard time being like, okay, so parts of this should be in shade, other parts shouldn't be in shade, so it can't just be this huge stark difference between the colors here. So I tried to like blend it and stuff, and then I figure out, oh no, layers are a problem.
Yeah.
layers are hard, so it was really hard.
But you know, one of the things, like as you get better at doing painting, approaching painting and stuff like that, one of the things that you know that I go full conspiracy theory on is shapes. And one of the things that would help with figuring out what is in shadow and what is in light is to plan out your shadow shapes. So like, yeah, you plan out your actual like local piece shapes, but you also want to figure out the shapes of your light. And that's where things get really convoluted when you're a beginner. But when you start getting a little bit more intermediate, figuring those things out makes it easier.
In one of the pictures, there was actually a picture of a person walking into the cave on the pathway.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to draw the pathway because I wanted it to just be the pristine cave itself.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I realized that, you know what, I should probably actually have some depth in this cave. And one of the conversations that we joked about when we visited the cave was, this is where the vampires live, isn't it? And also a child behind us, we overheard the child whispering to their parents.
Is this where the vampire stays?
Are there actually vampires? And it was...
God, I just laughed so hard.
Yeah, right?
I looked at Ledge and I was like, oh, this is why we can't go to national parks. We scar children.
Apparently, yeah. We had the conversation because you're actually writing a story with a vampire, and it kind of inspired you to be like, you know what? Yeah, vampires would probably be drawn to caves, wouldn't they? It's dark, it's a place that they can live without really being bothered too much.
Very low innate light going in, especially for vampires that like cannot handle sunlight at all. I have a series that I'm writing with my best friend. I've talked about it a couple of times on the channel. But in the prequel, the main character of the series goes into a cave system to find some Nosferatu. And in my story, the Nosferatu are like, if they so much as get a sliver of light on them, they will die. So it's like, yeah, cave systems are perfect for that. Because like when we were in the Mammoth Caves, the tour guides had us turn off our lanterns for a minute, or turned off the lights that were in the path for us to see just how truly dark it was. And you cannot see anything in those caves.
Absolutely not. There's no ambient lighting. It's all pure darkness. With talking about your book and everything, I based that person that was walking in to be Acanthus, with the long auburn hair and...
I couldn't tell if you were putting a character or not, and I was like, is that Acanthus? But I didn't say it.
Yeah.
So, oh my god. Okay.
Because I wanted to make it extra special, too, with, like, yes, we've been here. It's like, we have photos of this place, this exact photo here, so it's like, getting a drawing of it, decent enough drawing of it, is pretty cool.
Don't sell yourself short. This took a lot of effort, and I can tell. Like, how long did you take on this?
I think between 3.5 to 5 hours.
Okay.
So, like, relatively quick, given all of the stuff that's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, you've got perspective in this, you've got different layers, you know, you added a hint of a character down in there, like, there's a lot going on in this. Like, this is a full illustration.
And I added another branch, because in the actual thing there was another branch, and I kind of went back and forth on this small branch in front. I love it because it also adds that whole idea of like dappled lighting, where it's like really, really bright in front because the light is directly hitting it, whereas everything else would technically be in shadow.
It's super dark, yeah. It's also something that draws your eye to the cave.
But it also hides like majority of the cave. Was kind of one of the things where I was like, do I actually want to keep it there? Do I want to move it and modify it?
See, and this is something that gives me a really good opportunity to talk about references. So the point of references is not to copy it one for one. It's to give you an idea of a starting point.
Right.
Especially if you're only using one reference for that thing. So, like, if you didn't like that branch there, you could have moved it.
Yeah, I could have, and I was contemplating it, but I did also like how much effort I put into that branch, and I was like, I can't really move it. This is where that shading aspect of like, oh, well, this stuff should gradually go into the shade, and then I was like, it's not really doing what I want, so maybe the blur tool, no.
This is where doing a multiply layer over top would have made your life so much easier.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if with like gouache you would still do that.
I mean, with traditional gouache, obviously no, but even when you're painting traditionally, so with gouache, it's weird. With watercolors, you start with your, like, what you want to be darkest, and then you build up. So you have the most layers of paint on the darkest areas. When I did my cave painting, I started with the blues and did all of my colors over top of it. because blue is what my shadow color was. So all of the colors that were on top brought in that blue, and then I just did another layer of blue at the very end to push it back.
So in the end, I also tried to add in some of the shadow type situation.
Oh, nice, like the dappled light.
Yeah, the dappled light, or sun coming down through the trees, because this was all like pretty shaded.
Some of this stuff would be a lot easier to do with like a stamp brush and then kind of like moving and blurring certain things.
Yeah, I thought that was a good nod to the conversations that we had there, as well as I've been reading your story and got like halfway through, and being able to do something personalized like that in a place that we went to and enjoyed. I felt like that would mean a lot.
It does, and I absolutely love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now you have to put it everywhere, and you can't ever change away from it. And
all right, you want to see what I did?
Yeah, I do.
All right, let's get going.
Orange is back.
Orange on back.
Oh.
So yeah, I usually when I do my sketches, I don't spend like a super long time on them. I do them at a portion of the size of what I do, and lately, because I've been a little on the burnt out side with everything going on, I've only been doing enough ideas to where, like, I'll land on something I like, and then it's like, okay, that's the one I'm going to do. So I wound up doing 2 sketches for this, and I went with the second one. You can kind of get an idea already of what I did. But this gives me a rough idea of what my foreground looks like, what my midground looks like, where my focus is, and what my lights are. So I went, like, maybe I'll do a third one. Nah. But for those of you who don't know, Ledge is super, super enamored with dragons. And a couple of weeks ago, we wound up actually losing one of our cats, which was a pretty devastating experience. And
that one's William.
Yep.
Because he's screaming.
I'm glad you can tell.
Of course.
Yeah. But Ledge really likes dragons. So I went, you know, why not do something with one of your favorite things? And then also, like, put our babies in here.
Yeah. Aww.
I also went super, like, foresty, jungly with inspiration from the caves, but I didn't actually go, like, with the cave, so...
Could have put them in the cave system, like the tuberculosis.
Yeah, right? Oh my god.
Oh. Hey, we have that same green.
Yeah, mine's slightly darker than yours because I start with my shadows, but yeah, very, very close. So I'm mapping out a rough light pattern here just to kind of give myself a thing, because I didn't actually do line art. I did a painting this time, and I wanted to do something.
Ooh,
something.
God rays.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I just kind of went, all right, let me start as simple as I can, because I have this problem with going too detailed too quickly, and then I give myself more work than I need to.
Yeah.
So.
You do.
I don't know what that flashing is, but I might have turned off my my God Ray layer, because that was more of like a lighting sketch than anything.
Vine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. The foreground vines.
Yep. So, if you know anything about composition, I'll talk about that a little bit. The whole idea behind the vines going towards your focal point is to lead your eye to whatever is happening in you know, your focal point. And in this case, it's a pretty simple focal point. It's pretty much dead center.
Right.
I tried to offset it a little bit, but like I like when things are framed in such a way. But I'm doing a kind of painting style that like I do a lot that I learned from my mentor, starting dark and then adding my lights as I go. So like I did the lighting sketch just to remind myself of what would actually be in the light.
Ah, sure.
And then I started with my shadows. So
right. Dang, this is cool.
This was a lot of fun. I am still on my shapey bullshit. Everything is shapes.
Everything is shapes. I mean, I had shapes. You talked about my squiggles.
Yeah.
And I was saying, yeah, they're just Squiggles, what? How do you know? Immediately.
Because of the shapes.
But... Oh, this is cute.
Yeah.
Have you seen my dragons? I am the Dilf of dragons.
Oh my god. You had to bring it there, didn't you?
I'm sorry, it's just, it's that level of ridiculous. If you know, you know, and I'm sure none of you know.
Yeah.
But, oh my goodness. This is... Ooh, spikies, too.
Yeah. He's pretty simple in terms of dragon designs. But I tried to go, like, I know that your favorite color is orangey yellow, so I went with that. And
I mean, those are difficult colors to incorporate.
Yeah.
I imagine, because, like...
everything is all green, and yeah. So one of the things that happens when you're painting with ambient light is that the things that basically, when you've got so much of a color in your light source, it's going to, whatever your local color thing, like the dragon's orange, he's going to take on some of that green, because there's all of that green bouncing off and back onto the dragon. So, like...
that's, like, really heavy focus on the details.
Yeah,
like,
and see, that's...
not everybody go that far.
That is something that pros think about, though.
Yeah.
So, like, that, when you're just kind of, like, drawing, like, yeah, most people just go local color.
Or, like, if this was more of, like, a cartoony style or meant to be like that.
Even with cartoony styles, you'll see it sometimes. It's just not as in-depth as, like, a full painting would. So...
I could understand it in, like, very specific situations in, like, a cartoon, because it takes time to render all of that and get it right. But, like, in moments of, like, despair or moments of, like, terror or things where, like, the shadows come in and, like, the color turns red and everything gets tinged that way.
But that's kind of less of what I'm talking about, more of, like, changing things to fit a mood.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is literally figuring out how the light interacts. Like, one of the people that I really look up to is Jeremy Vickery, for example, and what he talks about when it comes to painting light is he'll do his light color and then his shadow color, and then he'll kind of tweak those colors slightly to look like they're the local color of the thing. So, like, most of his paintings have, like, 3 colors in them, maybe 4 or 5, and they're just different shades of those colors.
Okay.
And that has to do with color theory. There's different schools of thought when it comes to color theory, which makes it super, like, confusing. But, like, for the most part, that's kind of where I try to push my coloring. But I do something kind of in between. Like, you can see here, I've painted a lot with local color, but my colors are all, like, 2 or 3 different colors. Like, I have an orange, a blue, and a green in here, and everything else is just shades within that. So
interesting.
Yeah, and this was really fun doing that dappled light effect.
Right.
You can see, like, I just did 3 different colors and then kind of took the brighter color and dappled in at certain key points where I wanted your eye to go. So,
right.
That's part of also how you make really good decisions when you're painting, is you put more detail where you want the eye to go. So a lot of these trunks, you can tell, like, I did very little detail and effort into those.
Right.
But they look, like, really nice and passable.
Sure.
Once it's finished, so. I did quite a few of these I did with layer masks, which is basically just, like, if you have something on top of a layer in front, it kind of just sticks to that layer. Right here, what I did was turning on the light. Making those god rays really intense. Oh. Yeah.
That's cool.
Right?
God, I could even see this, like, in the end being, like, a GIF where you just modify the god rays so that it just kind of, like, sparkles.
I thought about doing that, but I'm not super confident in my animating skills the way that I am with my painting skills.
Right.
So, like, I didn't really want to play around with something like that. So Like maybe next year. But I am working on my animation skills and stuff. I'm trying to kind of push and pull my style so that I can animate fairly easily. But I'm very, very rusty when it comes to animation. Haven't done it in several years, so.
Yeah. We were practicing and working on something, but
yeah, I made some little like bats turning into ink blots the other day, and that was really fun. But I'm trying to get to a point of where like I can actually start doing animated shorts and stuff like that because I miss doing things like that, and it'd be a lot of fun to kind of do that for the channel.
Initially the blue lighting and stuff felt so weird because it's like, well, you're in a forest, so you wouldn't really be able to see the sky too much. But now it's really interesting that it's like it works now.
Yeah.
After the fact, so like that ability to have forethought in how it'll look and those layers and what's going to be in front of it. And it's so interesting because it's like you can work on something in the background so much, and then all of a sudden you put something in front of it, and it's like, well, now I just wasted all that time working on this really detailed thing in the background.
Right.
Like, I think about the animator that did How to Train Your Dragon that put out a clip talking about how it's like, oh, I really wanted to get this jiggle right on the throat area, so we get that perfect, and then we send it over to get special effects put in, and then they put a huge wave in front of it, so you don't even get to see all that hundreds of hours of work right there.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh man, that's like...
And that's kind of a downfall of working with a team in that aspect, because like
where there's not that communication of like, all right, we're gonna have coverage here.
Yeah.
But
like when you're working on your own piece, when you're doing it from start to finish, you can kind of plan ahead. Like, I really didn't go all that detailed in that background at all, but it looks like I spent a ton of time on it, right? Yeah. And that's because, like, I had the forethought, like, all this stuff is going to be in front of it. It's going to look fine,
Yeah. So mine took me, like, 4-ish, whatever hours it ended up taking. How long would you say that yours took?
About 7.
Yeah?
Yeah. If you're including the sketches, then it took closer to 8. But, yeah, it did not take me long at all. I actually whipped this out pretty fast. I think I did the entire painting in a day because it was the only thing that I worked on that day.
Okay.
But I was having fun working on it, and like this piece doubles as a memorial for our cat that passed away. Like I wanted to add that because he was your buddy, close to the end there, and you spent a lot of time with him as he was getting sick. So, like, I thought that would be a special way to kind of memorialize him in a positive way instead of focusing on something that was dark and sad and something that really, affected us negatively. So, like, with those things in mind, like, I got this done pretty quick.
Yeah.
I was really hyper-focused on it for a minute.
Yeah, and I mean, art and stuff, there's all that conversation about how it can be healing, it can be cathartic, and it can be, there's a process to art, and just like there's a process to grieving, there's a process to all of that stuff too. So I see where this was helpful in those ways as well, as not just like, oh well, I wanted it to be a nice picture.
Yeah.
kind of thing. This was like helping you with those kinds of feelings too.
Yeah, and I also wanted something that would kind of help you with it as well. And, like, it's been a couple of weeks since that happened, and I think we've largely kind of made our peace with it, but it was important to me.
Yeah.
Because I had this idea before that happened, and I was like, I don't want to change the idea and exclude Wilson from it. So, yeah, he's still in there. But this is why I did the color map at first, because I needed to figure out where the shadow would wrap around the wing.
Right. Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Wouldn't everything under the wing be really, really dark?
No, because there's a bit of a like curve to the wings. So light is, because of the angle of the god rays, it's coming through that spot. And, like, this isn't, like, the end of it at all. Like, I definitely play with this a bit. But, you can kind of see like where I'm mapping that around the the curves and stuff. So I find it funny that we both went for paintings.
Well, since the Ricky Tikki Tavi one, I kind of noticed, hey, this is kind of an easy, like, I wouldn't say easier than line art and doing, like, cell shading.
In some ways it is easier, in some ways it's significantly harder.
Yeah.
It's faster in some respects because, like, you get your shape in and you're done. But, like, it can also be slower and more difficult because the more that you push out of, like, a stylized area, the more, like, you have to be good at figuring out how...
The more it demands, like, kind of precision kind of thing. Whereas the most precise thing in cell shading stuff would be the lines.
Exactly.
And then after that, your colors and your, like, shadows and highlights.
And, like, this is clearly stylized and, you know, fantastical. But, like, if I were doing something that had a lot of real-world elements to it, I probably would have taken a lot longer on it. And that's kind of the thing, is, like, when you're doing something stylized, it's a little bit easier to paint as well, because you're not beholden to those, like, real-world elements. But, you know, those trees took me longer than it did to kind of get this dragon in here, right? And that's because trees are a real-world element. You have an idea of what that looks like.
Right.
And that's really hard when you're painting.
Yeah. And, like, yeah, you could definitely push it a lot more realistic by, like, focusing on, putting in, like, scales and shadowing on every single individual scale.
And I did do, like, the illusion of scales in certain points, but, like, they're very loose. And I think it works for the style that I did this in.
Right. Oh, horns.
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't think you've drawn a dragon in a long time, either.
No, I haven't.
Like, the last one that I can think of was, like, you have a Copic marker one that's up decorating your office.
Yeah, and I drew that before I left New York, so at least 12 years ago. But no, I have drawn dragons since that. I did a study of dragons, not this year, but last year, last May, based on Komodo dragons, turning something real into something fantastical.
Oh, yeah, I remember that now.
Yep.
Okay, wow, those god rays in the back with that tree is really cool.
Right? That tree was so hard to get in there. It kept wanting to be too forward. I was just like, no!
What? Big blob. Whoa. We're looking through some night scope visions.
Yeah, I was playing with some stuff there. This is not going to stay this rad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but you see how, like, doing those little details of, like, light going through the wings and stuff like that, like, how that makes it look so much more realistic. The grass was really fun. I've had a lot of fun just doing large expanses of grass lately.
Oh, I apparently completely missed when you, like, put colors down in the water. Like, that's really nice. Those shadows and then, like...
It took me, like, 5 seconds.
Yeah. I missed it. Oh. Oh, man.
Still water is really easy. That thing that I was telling you about doing a stamp brush and then just smudging it out, that's what I did there.
Oh, okay.
So you see how, like, super realistic it makes that look without a lot of effort. And then I just threw the little patches of grass and it made it look like it took me, like, you know, so many hours to do.
Yeah. Because you also still have your foreground.
Yeah.
To do, though.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this took me about 7 hours, so...
Yeah.
I still have to do the cats, too. The cats are still just silhouettes right now.
Yeah, the cats are just blobs.
Yep.
Unholy demons.
I had done the rock, and then I didn't like it, and got rid of it, so...
Hours wasted.
Delete your art.
Years of government training wasted.
I decided to go way less measured and much more shapy with my second go, and I liked it a lot more, so...
Mm-hmm. And I do like that, like, the oranges and the yellows or golds and stuff that you picked weren't, like, so overtly yucky.
Yeah.
Like, this is like a mustard yellow, and mustard is disgusting. But, like, and sometimes mustard yellow can look very disgusting.
But in the element that this is in, it blends very well with the colors. The reason why I went more mustardy than more gold is because orange conflicts with green. Mm-hmm. Especially the bluish green that I have, because it's not quite a complementary to it. And yellow, you can have greenish yellow or you can have orangish yellow. So I went more green with my yellow because it pulled in the greens of the background.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that goes back to what I was saying about local color mattering just a little bit less. I was checking my values there.
Yeah.
You can see, like, I did not spend a lot of time on my scales or anything, but when you're not zoomed in like this, you know, at the 100% scale, you can definitely see, like, it looks really nice. So.
Yeah, it does. So cool. Whoa.
What am I doing here?
We green now.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm doing there. That's what it was. I was putting in another multiply, but I did it as a level correction layer. So basically, I copied the whole thing, darkened it, and then I put a mask on it so that I could just delete out what I didn't want showing. What am I doing? Okay. Like, what? What?
Right?
Oh, that's what I was doing. I was pulling up references of the cat.
Right? Just because he sits next to you every single day doesn't mean that you know.
And he wasn't sitting next to me at this point, so I couldn't just, like...
Those are very orange eyes.
Yeah, I mean, his eyes are very orange.
Are they that orange? Really?
When the light's shining on them, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, too, is I wanted them to be visible from the
distance,
yeah. And you really wouldn't, like, see them that intensely.
Yeah. It is cool just to see you put in, like, these blobs and then just kind of go, blah, blah, and then it's like, oh, there we go, you're shaded.
Yeah.
Like, what?
I mean, these, to be fair, like, they're only, like, maybe 150 pixels wide. Like, they're really small on the actual canvas.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of the whole canvas.
Yeah. I need to fix his nose still. I definitely fixed it before I finished it out, but his nose is such a weird shape at this point.
Right?
There it is.
That's quite the face for a little creature.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That was me putting in some of that bounce light.
Yeah, you can see some of that.
Yeah. It's such a subtle thing, but...
Right. But no, you can really see it there. That's really... It looks really cool when you kind of catch on to it and notice it. Like, even with this close and looking at the orange, like, you can see levels of green in there and stuff, too. So, you don't really think about that when we were far away. I was just kind of like, oh, yeah, you know, whatever. It's just shadowed, right? And then it's like, oh, no, look, it's tons of green in there.
Tons of color variations and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I had Wilson facing away the camera since he's no longer with us, so... Have a little bit of that orange bouncing off of him.
Mm-hmm. Aww.
And then I forgot to record for like the first 2 minutes of doing the because it was a new day after a break or something.
Yeah.
So, but all I missed was putting down the the stamp tool.
swatches,
Yeah, so it's like I'm not redoing this section just for that.
Yeah, right.
But I really like how I do grass anymore. Like it's really effective, and
Yeah,
I think going into the future I'll probably do it like that. So
right. That's really cool with the individual strands every now and again, and the different colors and
just
of the
enough to make it look
strands.
like super super detailed,
Yeah.
more dappled light. I was lazy with this front thing.
Ah.
Just
Lazy or intuitive.
yeah, right. It's like I already painted this. I might as well.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I
And then I'm
Wouldn't have
playing with some gradient maps to really punch the colors a bit. So
Whoa.
yeah, just kind of add to that glow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that is that.
Wow. That's so cool. Oh, you put a little halo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, this is so cool. Oh, thank you, my babe. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. 2 awesome landscape pieces with... But if you liked this, consider giving it a like, leaving a comment on what kind of piece you would make for somebody as an anniversary gift.
Yeah. Drop us a subscribe. We're close to 100 followers now.
We are.
So
Almost there.
pretty neat. If you like what we do, then like Ledge said, like and subscribe. We have the Patreon and also the coffee if you'd like to support. I've got prints for sale and stuff like that, so keep an eye on the website and stuff below in the description. But as always, we hope that you are taking care of yourself. Drink your water, do what you can, and I will be back next Friday with something new.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.